I am Geoff Eido. This is Lunacy, where we discern the sacred from the insane and admit that whether we like it or not, we are all profoundly affected by the cycles of the moon. How? My guests today are Gayle and Mildred Kirschenbaum. Gayle is an award-winning filmmaker. She's made a beautiful film called Look at Us Now, Mother, detailing her experience of forgiveness and love with her mother. And Mildred is about to be a centenarian, right? She's about to turn 100 years old. And I'm just super excited to have you both on the program. Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited about this conversation. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, great. So let's just dive in. So Mildred, you're 100. How's it going? How's it being 100 years old almost?
I can't believe it. I don't feel 100. I drive. I do my options in the stock market. I live alone. I do my own marketing, my own cooking. I cannot believe I'm going to be 100 this week, next week.
That's awesome. That's great. That's so great. And I just kind of wanted to start with like a little bit of background about you, Mildred. Where did you grow up and what was that like for you? Just give us a little bit of history of your upbringing and how it was back then.
I was born in Brooklyn, and my mother lost a child when the baby was 2-3 years old, and I was a kid. And she then became a helicopter mother hovering over me. But I had a father who was in the wholesale fruit and produce, and things did not go good for him. And he had an insurance policy, and my mother didn't have any money to feed us. My father wasn't. So he figured if he takes his life, she'll get $2,000 and she'll have money. In those days, that was a lot of money. And kids were not allowed in hospitals. So I spent a great deal of time alone.
Explain what he did, what he tried.
Oh, yeah. So did he end his own life then?
No.
What did he do?
I don't remember. I think turn the gas on
He attempted suicide.
He attempted
gas.
Okay.
But he didn't.
But I spent a great deal. He was in the hospital maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks, sitting alone in the hospital, the corridors downstairs as a little girl. So I don't think I had a very good childhood, but it had nothing to do with my mother. It had to do with circumstances. Because if you remember sitting in hospitals all the time when you're a kid, it's quite traumatic. And yet, I can't remember anything about my sister's death. So who knows, But you move on with life. Life goes on. I buried a son. I have a hole in my heart, but life goes on. And it's your attitude also in life, which I'd like to pass on to people. Because I know people who are much younger than I am, and they're afraid to drive, they're afraid to get on the parkway, afraid they can't do this, and I can't travel anymore. How am I going to pack a bag? How am I going to get to an airport? Come on. Get with it. Get with it. You could get to the airport. You can't walk. Look, I'm very ambulatory. However, when I get to an airport, forget it. I can't walk that distance, so I order a wheelchair. Have a wheelchair. We'll travel. What would you like to know?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
To everything.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's I have a thing that I like to say, which is aging gracefully is great, but I'm all about aging powerfully, And it seems like that's definitely what you're doing. You have both the grace and the power. It's really, really great. Is there a secret that you have that you want to share with people about how you look at life that doesn't have you get down about getting older and just has you keep going and getting after it?
Look, you go through life once. You cannot be a Sunday morning quarterback. I hope everyone knows what that means. You can't do I should have, could have, would have. It's impossible. Move on. And don't carry grudges. And have a positive attitude about life. Yes, I like to play bridge. I like to play cards. I live in a gated community. I drive to the little clubhouse here. I have fun. I play with women who are 15, 20 years younger than I am. I buried everyone my age. We have a bar downstairs. I go down there, and my vodka and tonic, and I'm a happy camper. That doesn't
That's
mean
beautiful.
there's nothing between here. Because I still manage portfolios, do options, manage the house myself, pay my bills, do my marketing. And I have to thank him up there for watching over me also. He has a lot to do with it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I just want to get a little more intimate with kind of your upbringing. So you were born in Brooklyn, and you grew up there.
That
and so
year,
born...
gas, but anyone who wants to know, that year gas was a penny a gallon.
Wow. That was 1923, right?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Good, my math. That's amazing. That's great. So you were born in 1923 and you grew up in Brooklyn, and your dad was in the produce business and it did not go well. He tried to end it. And then so part of that was that you grew up in, you spent a lot of time in the hospital. And then could you just take us through a little bit of kind of your history from there? When did you meet your husband and start your family? And did you stay in Brooklyn?
Yes, I did. My husband was 5 years older, and my brother was 4 years older. And when I started to go out with my husband, my brother said, "What is he doing, robbing the cradle?" Did you ever hear that expression?
Uh-huh.
And I met him, and we went out. And in my day, if you wanted sex, you got married.
Uh-huh. Right.
Today is a laughing joke, right?
I have a feeling there were people that are having sex then too, without being married. You might not know them.
So I got married very young. And then he went overseas, and he was busy fighting in Guadalcanal, and it was no fun.
World War II.
In World War II.
Yeah.
It was a bitter experience for him.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And he came back on my birthday.
I didn't know
Oh,
that.
wow. Amazing.
He
That's
landed.
interesting.
He landed in San Francisco because I saw the Golden Gate Bridge on my birthday.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So-
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And did you find that he was how did the war affect him afterwards? Was he haunted by it, or?
He told me stories, and he said when they went to the jungles, the grass had such blades that cut them. I said, yeah. And I didn't believe it. Then they did a documentary on it, on Guadalcanal, and that's exactly what they said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So-
Wow.
He had a tough time. He did. Out there. But he really didn't discuss it much. But I'll tell you one thing. I was married 62 years. And when I turned over in bed and looked at him at night, I knew he was my best friend.
That's
And
beautiful.
that makes a big difference. And I was his
Yeah.
best friend.
That's great. That's great. When did you lose him?
2006.
Okay. All right. I'm
And
sorry
he
for your
had
loss.
to death. I would like to have or anyone else, because he was in a casino and he had a stroke and never knew what hit him.
Okay. Okay. So he went out doing what he loved
Yeah.
quickly without a lot of pain.
Yeah, yes. Whereas my
Beautiful.
son died of cancer. And
Okay.
all the money in the world, all the love in the world couldn't help him.
Yeah. I'm
I
sorry
held
for
his
your loss
hand
there.
when he was born, and I held his hand when he left. And that's a hole that stays with me forever.
Hmm.
You
How
lose
old
your-
was your son
You
when
know,
he
you
passed?
lose your husband, you lose your whole way of life. Your whole way of life changes. I don't know if you're married or divorced, but I would imagine even if you get a divorce, your whole way of life changes. But when you lose a child, it's a hole that cannot be repaired.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. How old was he when you lost him?
What was he, about 72?
71.
71.
Okay. Hmm.
He died the
Yeah.
end of 2019, right before COVID.
Oh, just a few years ago. Yeah, so that's fresh. Yeah, I'm sorry
Yeah.
for your loss.
And I'll show you how stupid I am. His wife died of breast cancer. So I went to my internist for whatever reason. And I said, I'm not stupid, but I have a question to ask you. Is there such a thing as cancer being catching? Because there was no cancer in our family. And she said to me, no, it's not catching. But they drink the same water. They had the same electric wires going over the house or out of the house. And that has a lot to do with it.
Hmm. Indeed. Yeah, definitely. The same environment.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So, and then Mildred, so you got married. It sounds like you had a beautiful relationship with your husband, loving
We
relationship.
argued every single day of our marriage.
Okay.
But
What did you
never
argue
went
about?
to bed angry.
Okay.
He said what he wanted. I said what I wanted. And we finished the argument. And the next thing would have been, should we go out to dinner? Or you want to have salad? It was put to sleep.
Beautiful.
Because if you argue and you don't talk to each other the first night, and you're angry the second night, the third night you want a divorce, and the fourth night, you don't know why you were arguing over, or what you were arguing over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's really great. A lot of the advice that I got married in October of last year, so I'm a newlywed. October 15th.
So remember what I'm telling you. Marriage takes work.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, if you want a good marriage, you cannot glide through it.
Mm-hmm.
It takes work. You are two people with two different personalities. As much as you think you're like one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And it's interesting. That's one of the practices that we have, is that if we get into an argument, we make sure that it's squashed before we go to sleep. Because as I understand it, one of the main things that contributes to divorce is contempt in the relationship, where you have contempt for the other person, like you said so beautifully. One day you're having the argument, then the next day you're still mad, and then the third day you're getting a divorce, and then you're wondering what you were mad about. That's really great. And so great. So you met your husband, and then you had children. You have
I have 3 children.
3 children.
2 boys
Okay.
and the girl, and here's the girl.
And here's the girl. Yeah.
That was
Gayle.
spicy relationship.
Yeah.
Mother,
So I'd love to dig.
are always heavy relationships.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah.
So
I have 2 sisters.
I'll let her talk about my ugly side with her.
Okay, great. Yeah, Gayle, I'd love to hear. So I know part of your journey and your journey together has really been a lot of forgiveness. And I'm familiar with some of the trauma that you endured, but I'd just love for you to share about kind of what it was like growing up for you and what the dynamic in your family was like.
Well, like I think I start my TED Talk. Did you ever feel like you were born in the wrong family? felt like I landed in enemy territory. So that wasn't good. From my earliest memories. Yeah, it was, so I don't know if you believe this, but I think I came into this world an old soul. So I feel like I came in with knowledge and into a family of new souls. So I knew the endless criticisms and abuse were not because I did anything wrong. I knew there was something else going on. And so I was, since I was very young, I wanted to know what made people tick. Why do people do what they do? So I couldn't understand why my mother was so angry at me all the time and unleashed at me and was adoring to my brothers. So I used to try to find out what happened in her childhood. I would ask her brother, what happened to mommy when she was young, or what happened in your childhood? But I got the usual, I don't know, nothing, or whatever. I never got any answers. So I had no idea what happened. But it was pretty tough, suffering that wrath. And I did come out of the womb a very sensitive, super sensitive, creative person into a family that was not particularly so. So it's always the most sensitive child who gets preyed upon, and we're usually the more creative ones. So as in my movie, one of the greatest therapists who's in it, she concludes essentially I was a misfit for my family. They didn't know how to handle me because I came out with my own mind and my own thoughts. And my older brother, he was a good soldier. My mother, he even admits it in my film, you do what you're told to do. So he did what he was told to do, to wear what he was told to wear. My mother had him put me on top of the refrigerator when I was a little kid. She had her little bouncers, my brothers, and they took the orders. So I wasn't like that, and as she'll say, Gayle was born into a numbers family, and I'm not a numbers person. So yeah, I think there's a reason for the families we're born into. So I didn't grow up with that, loving, adoring support. It was more or less head to toe. There was not much right about me. My hair, I just went to the salon last year, the other day before I flew down. So she blew my hair straight, but I have
Otherwise, I had curly out to here and down to there.
which you can tell she doesn't like, right? So she was having my hair straightened since I was in third grade. And and then the nose, when that grew, the campaign to have a nose job started and went on for many decades until I made a funny movie called My Nose, which led to the Bicker film, Look at Us Now, Mother. And so it was like from head to toe, I needed improvement. And my lifestyle as a creative was disagreeable. I was supposed to be the teacher, as my mother used to introduce her three children. This is my son, Robert, the doctor, my son, Erwin, the lawyer. And she would say, Gayle, the con artist. She thought it was funny because I was the artist. But, and she used to say, for you, college, this isn't important. You're going to get married and have babies. And, but be a teacher so you can go back to it. So when I was told you're going to state school, which I was completely fine with, I picked the one that didn't have an education department. So, I always followed my passions in life. And, the sad thing is my older brother who tragically died, and he had a lot of anger in him and a lot of secrets. When he was dying, and we were never close because, how they were raised, they weren't raised, here's your little sister, love her and adore her. It was more like, you hold her, you do this, you get in her room. So they were kind of working for the big boss here. So
you were sort of a burden in a way on them, just because you were like an extra. You were something to take care of for them, so they had to sort of
or get rid of
to you,
or control, or try to control, or get rid of, or whatever, or shut up, or get out of the way, or whatever. So so that continued through adult life, and bullying gets passed on to the next generation also. So how the kids are raised, but in any event. When my brother got sick, and my mother always used to say, there's no cancer in our family, and then he gets cancer. And I have a lot of theories about mind, body, spirit. I am a firm believer of the connection of how our thoughts and our energy and how that can get us sick or heal us.
Me
Anyway,
too.
right. So when he was nearing death, I mean, cancer is the most horrific, illness, and to watch it ravage somebody's body. He said to me he was very jealous of me. He couldn't even speak in normal tone, he was so weak. And I thought my knee-jerk reaction was that he had cancer and I did not. So I immediately said, I wish I had a magic baton and I would get the cancer out of you. And then I learned that wasn't it. And he revealed that he was jealous of me because I lived my life as a free spirit. And I was so shocked by that because, I did not marry. That's probably one of my scars, because growing up feeling, having a Cinderella complex, and somewhere at age 12, I said, I'm never going to let anybody hurt me like this. So, fear of that kind of intimacy and getting hurt. I mean, I've had my share of wonderful relationships, but I obviously will not win an award for longevity, and I haven't tied the knot, But I think I might one day. I'll be a late bloomer in that. And yeah, and so here was my big brother. He owned a big law firm, a fancy house, and fancy cars, and children and grandchildren. And, obviously I don't have any offspring. And as you age, you start thinking who's going to take care of me. And I just thought, wow, I didn't make decisions that were money driven. I made them because I wanted to make that film, or I wanted to do this or whatever. So I wanted to travel somewhere. So I did that. So I then thought, oh my God, my brother was trapped. He did what he was supposed to. In fact, in our culture, a doctor or a lawyer is respectable for a son. And he was pre-med, but he was feigning in the labs. So he switched to the next one that was acceptable, and he became a lawyer. But he also ended up in an area of law that was horrible. I don't know what he stated, but collections. And he said, what did I do with my life? I put liens on people's houses. I'm helping people.
Yeah.
My other brother's a doctor. He was helping people. So it was really sad to hear that. And it was so tragic for me because, I didn't realize he was trapped. To me, he had all the luxuries and the family and the children and grandchildren. So, yeah, I just, I came out a different person. I just, a very empathetic, very connected, high EQ was more important to me, emotional intelligence. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how much people hide, and I think that's such a common thing in our culture, and always has been, probably, just how much people can hide their pain and their suffering. And it's all about looking good all the time. And if you're making the money and you've got the right car and everything, then that's what's important. Whereas you might be rotting on the inside, which I think both of you in your communications and how you express yourselves point to. Seems to me with both of your lives and how you behave, it's really about your attitude and how much enjoyment you're getting out of life and doing what you want to do and going after it. I just think that's such a beautiful example. And one of the things that we really like to get into in this show, in this program, is transformation. Going from a place where you felt like you were very much a victim, or you were being, abusive or like a persecutor kind of a thing, to getting to a place where you're free of that and where you forgive yourself. And I know that's a huge part of your journey together. And so I kind of want to start, Mildred, by asking you, I know you were pretty judgmental and harsh with Gayle while she was growing up. I'm just wondering, for you, was that something, was it like a reflection of your attitude toward yourself? Was it also part of the way that you were raised? Or where do you think that kind of degree of scrutiny came from?
Gayle just told you why. Because Gayle always did what she wanted to do.
Okay. I see.
That was
gotcha.
it.
She couldn't control me.
Yeah. When Gayle was little, and if I gave her a coloring book, she never scribbled. Yeah. If it was a girl, a picture of a little doll, she made flowers, polka dots. Gayle was a born artist. She could do what I can do.
Okay.
And Gayle danced to her own tune all her life. And sometimes that tune didn't fit in with my activities.
Right. Okay.
Well, she once wrote me a letter saying when because I left home pretty young. At the end of my 16th year, the social worker said, "Get out of your house."
Yes, but
I
she
went-
was smart. She went to the university at that age.
I graduated. I don't know if I was smart, but I graduated high school early and I got into university young. But the thing was that it was 200 miles away, so I didn't have to live under the roof. So she said to me, she wrote me that I was her product. She produced me, and I was ruining it. So it was that kind of sense of ownership. And
Okay.
I was to, there's I'm not a parent. I never became a parent, but I do follow and know a few therapists. Bonnie Harris is great, who teaches connective parenting, and then someone who's had tremendous success all over Oprah. Dr. Shivali Tisbury, I think. But it's all about sort of conscious parenting, where you are observing your child and learning who they are, because we're different human beings. We can't be molded to who you are or what you think we should be. And also the mother-daughter relationship is the most highly charged one. If you Google in Amazon or under books, it's as far as family relationship books, it is the most common one written. Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers is very common because we are reflections, we're the same gender. So there's gender competition.
Yeah.
And also, as daughters, we are reflections of our mothers. So that's why it's very common for mothers to criticize our hair, our weight, how we dress, how we look, because we represent them. So, yeah, so it's, and then, that leads to tremendous conflict. A lot of daughters get eating disorders and all kinds of things that develop along the way. So, I mean, the good news is for me is that I realized really young that I wasn't doing anything wrong. I realized that there was something going on here. And, but I would say my scar is, as I said earlier, was the commitment thing, how can you trust anybody? Because, the people, my parents, I was so sure when I was young, I was adopted, like parents don't treat, a child like this. So I had that Cinderella complex. But when I hit middle age, I went on my journey. I was having great, I come from entertainment business, and I was having tremendous, lovely career success. And, one day I'm on the Today Show and the New York Times, and the next day I'm fly back to New York, and I used to live in Los Angeles, and I visit my family, and I'm back being bullied and criticized, and I'm having the same reaction. I'm cringing from it. I'm getting angry. And I knew that I had that victim hat on. And so I had to take it off, and I had to and I knew the key was to learn how to forgive. So that's the journey I went on, and I figured it out. And I ended up becoming a forgiveness coach because of my own journey and success and story. Because today, this woman, when I was young, I used to think they went on vacation, and I thought, well, if that plane crashed, I'd be free. And that's pretty sick to wish like your mother died, right? Like admittedly. And I even told her this. And now I live in fear of losing her, and she's like, how many more years are you going to go? So, she usually ends a lot of our social media posts. She'll go, well, we're not only friends, we're best friends, or something like that.
Travel companion.
And that too. Yeah. After my father died, that was a turning point in our relationship, because that was 2006. And one of my movies was invited to Avignon, France. And I was here with her in Florida and helping her, after my father died. And she said, I'll come with you. I was like, we hadn't worked on our relationship. But how can I say no? I mean, my father was gone. They were big travelers, and I couldn't say no. And so I would say most of the family thought we would come back not speaking.
Yes.
And they were in for a surprise, because that was literally the beginning of many adventures we took together. I mean, we have gone. In fact, I had always wanted to go to India, and my father did not, apparently. So even though they traveled the world, they hadn't gone to India. So we went to India 2 times and traveled all over to different areas. and we loved it. So we became travel companions because, so in one way, we're very similar. I mean, I have to thank, well, the irony of the story is we're very similar, okay? We're both very strong-minded, very independent people, and very adventurous. My brothers were not, they're like, you're going to go to that part of the area or the neighborhood, or you're going to get in a local bus. Like, she would, take the back roads. I'd take the back roads, eat off the kiosks on the streets in third world countries. So I guess it's a sense of curiosity and adventure that I have. And I grew up very near JFK Airport. So they were travelers, my parents. And when we would go to fetch them at the airport, this is a long time ago, talking in the 60s. And, there was one international arrivals building. And back in those days, you could literally like go to the gate, and meet your loved ones or drop them off at the gate. And I just remember seeing these people coming down the escalator who just didn't look like the people I grew up with. They had turbans on and it looked like you were wrapped in a sheet. What did I know? I grew up in a pretty homogenized area. And I was like, where are they from? And what do they eat? And what do they like? And what are their traditions? I was just so curious. I had this huge wanderlust. I was attracted to difference. I wasn't afraid of it. I was attracted. So I just couldn't wait to travel. So we have that very much in common. I would say my brothers did not inherit that. I mean, they both married at 21 and had children and, did the traditional things. And of course, obviously I did not. But
and for a sweet 16, I sent her to Europe.
Well, beautiful.
She went on an art tour.
Well, there were three choices. You got a sweet 16 party, a nose job, which is what she wanted me to have, or a teen tour. And I found this one called Paint in Italy, where in Italy I'd have, we'd have a tutor for painting. And of course, that was a no-brainer. But you did kept threatening to cancel that and get me a nose job that I didn't want. And no, I never had the nose job.
Okay.
Yeah,
amazing.
That's
wondering.
Awesome. I'm fine with my nose.
Yeah, looks great to me.
I would rather travel with Gayle than anyone I know.
That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
Because we roll with the punches.
Yeah, that's great.
And I think we've now, at this point, taught my other son, the one who's alive, who comes with us, to roll with the punches also, right?
Beautiful.
So
that's beautiful.
We do. We travel a lot together. 3 different personalities traveling together and getting along. How could you figure that one?
Yeah, that's great. So just I'd love to get a little bit deeper into kind of when the sort of kind of the transformation happened with your relationship. So I'm just wondering, Mildred, from your perspective, because I know there was like a time where you were a little more harsh with Gayle. Why do you think that was?
Well, if I called her name for something, I had a colonial house. She ignored me. Didn't answer. She could be standing 5 feet away. Make believe she didn't hear me.
Mm-hmm.
You want to ask me why?
Yeah.
Well, in the slave concept here, I felt this incredible noose around my neck and being controlled. So this is back in the day when the phones were mounted on the wall and you might have had one in the house or two, and I'd be upstairs and the phone is ringing in the kitchen and she's right next to it and she's screaming, Gayle, get me the phone, which means running down. I just kind of felt like it was all about her controlling me. And I just really resented it. And there was a lot of humiliation that would happen also. And I didn't appreciate that. So yeah, I was pretty pissed off.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was greatly offended, and it was relentless and endless. I mean, if you do watch my movie, friends of mine, when I interviewed them that I found from childhood, they're like, I didn't like coming to your house. Your mother was always calling you, Gayle, in this high-pitched voice. So that's their memory. So yeah, so I just tried to shut it out, ignore her, and that triggered her. It was not a good time. It wasn't a
Yeah.
good time. And my brothers were beating me up. It was not a good time.
But brothers, but siblings always argue. I think about it. I took a shoe and hit my brother in the head, and he started to bleed. I locked myself in the bathroom when they wanted to get peroxide, and I wouldn't let them get into the bathroom unless they promised they wouldn't hit me. I just remember siblings
I've
are always
heard-
fighting.
Yeah, but you didn't grow up where there was bullying that continued throughout adulthood. You had a close relationship with your brother. You can't compare it. Your mother didn't pit you guys against each other.
Right. So my question is like, what was the transformation that happened? Because obviously you have a different relationship now. You both travel together. There's clearly a lot of love between the two of you. You know, you do occur as best friends. So what happened? What shifted? What shifted for you? How did you get out of the victim trap and really reassess how you related to your mom?
Okay, so I tell you, I made this movie called My Nose. It's a very short film. What happened was I'd spent my career behind the camera. And then I moved back to New York and I had a mutual rescue with a little Shih Tzu. We rescued each other. And I had this idea for a TV show and I had a camera built for it. This is years before GoPro existed. Everyone went, GoPro, no, GoPro didn't exist. It was like 2000, well, before 9/11 actually. And so I hit the streets of New York with her and a little crew and thought I'm doing a pilot, but it ended up becoming a film. But I started getting coverage, like a huge 2-page front cover feature in the New York Times. And just while I was shooting it, I actually put up a website when websites just began, and they were usually just like banks and big companies. And, you know, as an artist, I learned the software a little bit and Photoshop a little. So it was very clever and cute and pretty. And you know, this is before blogging existed. So I put up a diary thinking my dog and I are going to write this. And, you know, so people kept coming back. Anyway, long story short, I ended up in front of the camera and that movie ended up on HBO. And then I thought, well, everybody's saying you're good in front of the camera. So, you know, I said to her, she's always wanted me to have a nose job and always wanted to get me into the plastic surgeon's office. So I said, you know what? I will go to 3 plastic surgeons with you for a consultation as long as I can have a camera crew with me. And she couldn't care less about that. And what resulted was a very funny short film called My Nose about her relentless campaign to get me to have a nose job. So it was the reaction to that film, because as a short film, it plays with other films. And when you're on stage, you're with the other filmmakers too. But there was always this line when we were done with the Q&A that was in front of me, and they always said the same things. I love your nose, don't touch it. I can't stand your mother. And I'm thinking, you've hardly seen anything in that little film. And the last one is, let me tell you my story. And it didn't have to be about a nose, but some childhood trauma that they never got over and they attributed to their mother and often a long deceased mother. And that's when I turned to my mother and I said, Mom, would you be open to going on camera and working on our relationship? And when she said yes, I knew I had a gold mine because she become very funny. I mean, I don't remember her. In my childhood, she was the Wicked Witch of the West. I don't remember her humor, but she became super funny, the queen of the one-liners, super smart. And then we had this huge archive because in the 50s, when I'm born, my father was shooting. So I had, you know, there's a footage of my mother pregnant with me, and the next one I'm in her arms. So when he stopped and we went into the 70s or 80s, I picked up. And then I knew there was all this archives from their past. I had my father's World War II book, or I knew it existed. She had tons of pictures. She had done modeling, and she just had a lot of pictures. So I had been doing my genealogy. I started in 81. So I had interviews with family members that are long gone, like my grandmother, and part of that phone conversations in the film. So I had this huge archive, you know, for a filmmaker that's a documentary filmmaker. It was great. I'm open, I'm a communicator, I'm a storyteller, and she's a character. So I knew I had what it took. So she agreed. And that's when we went on the journey. But I would say it started before I started shooting the film, which I think was 2011. It started in 2006 when my father died. I mean, about my journey. Because when he died and we went to France together on that first trip, I think for you, Mom, you got to see me in my world, you know, filmmaker and a film festival, and also how I traveled. Like, I'm not a stay at the Hilton or the Ritz person. I'm like, you know, there was no Airbnb, but there were B&Bs and stay locals, get to know the local people. And we argued over the first place because there's no air conditioning that she wanted. But I believe you had a really good time in the end. We slept in every room because every room was too hot. So we got to use every room. But she got to meet people. And yeah, I think I don't want to put the words in her mouth, but I will. And you could speak up. I think she got to see me in my world and maybe gain a little respect for me in that way.
Is that right, Mildred? Was that like a turning point, that trip for you? Did you see Gayle as a different person?
Yes, it was. You want to expand?
And what was that transformation like for you? Like how did it change your perspective of your daughter?
Well, I realized, I knew she was talented, but I realized how much she was talented.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And you also got to enjoy traveling with her. And
Yes.
would you say part of it was also that, you know, now you're really dependent upon each other? Here you are traveling together and having this experience and like that?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we're codependent.
That's great.
We're very dependent on each
Do you
other.
hear something in the background now?
Yeah. Is that a storm?
Yes.
Yeah, it's really coming down.
Wow. Amazing.
Like, where are you
Yes.
located?
We live in Northern California,
Okay.
an hour north of Sacramento. We used to live in LA, but then we couldn't take it anymore. So we
I was in
moved
LA.
up here to the forest.
You probably
Yeah.
you were probably too young to be in LA for the Northridge earthquake.
I moved out there in 98.
Yeah, so I was there 87 to 2000, but that Northridge earthquake was and the riots, there was a lot going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you from
Yeah.
Northern California or from Southern California or neither?
No, I'm actually from Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh, nice.
So I grew up there. I just went to my 30th reunion last couple weeks ago. Took my wife, and we just got married. There's a lot of similarities actually between you and I, Gayle, in terms of like I also produce films and I'm a musician and an artist, and my sisters are, you know, one of them's a lawyer and the other one's a therapist, and so I can relate to being kind of the the odd man out.
The different one in the family, yeah. Omaha,
Yeah.
Nebraska, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Were your family like pioneering settlers there?
Originally, there's a lot of Swedish in my history, and so they kind of moved over from there. And then my grandfather he sold farm equipment on one side, and my other grandfather on the other side, my mom's grandfather or father was he worked for the railroad, so Union Pacific. So Omaha was a big hub for that, and then my folks met there, and my dad was a lawyer, and yeah. So, and I also had to work through a lot of, with my own father, I had to work through a lot of transformation because he didn't really approve of me being an artist either. My mother was very accepting, and she's a musician, and she writes musicals and that kind of thing. But my dad also was very much like, you should go to law school and be in business and take over what I'm doing and like that. And I had never had any interest in doing that at all whatsoever. And at some point for me, I realized I'm responsible for my own story about my dad and how it is that I create a relationship with him, and also recognizing, the way that he was raised, the abuse that he had to face from his own father, and the lack of acceptance from his own father really affected the relationship that he had with me. And then at some point I took responsibility for that. And I said to him, look, I'm responsible for the story that I have about you. And I really want to create a relationship where there's just unconditional love, and that's it. And if we have anything that's in between us and that we talk about it and squash it. And that really created for us a really beautiful relationship up until he passed away, which was actually in March of this year.
Right.
Yeah.
You're there. Nice.
Thank you. Yeah, it was kind of a long time coming. He had Parkinson's disease.
No.
Terrible.
Yeah. So,
How old
but you
was-
know, he was 82. He was 82. He's about to be 83. So yeah, I mean, I think what's so beautiful about you and your relationship is also the same amount of forgiveness that you've had for each other and the transformation in your relationship. Obviously, there's no bullying going on now. You guys are just having fun together.
But we do fight like cats and dogs. So this is
We
really
do argue. I
all the
hang up
time.
on her, she hangs up on me.
Constantly.
But that's it.
But we call back in 2 seconds. It's like nothing happened. The key here is we never hold a grudge. We express our feelings, we express our emotions. You don't keep anything in. And we do, we piss each other off. And then the next minute, it's like nothing happened.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. So it sounds like part of
Something out to you. You see this 4-leaf clover that I'm wearing?
Yes.
It was sent to me from someone from Dublin, Ireland,
Oh.
as a birthday present. Someone I don't know.
One of her many fans. She has stacks
Amazing.
of birthday cards. I mean, we're just going through them. Tons of cards. She got a blanket. She's gone, and just the cards are incredible. Somebody in Maui, she mailed it before everything happened. So I've been texting her back and forth to see what I can do to help them. But yeah,
That's great.
they're all over the world. So I launched my Instagram account for my fine art photography, and it was growing slowly. And then last summer we were on, she loves to cruise. So we were on a cruise and celebrating her 99th birthday. And I just aimed my camera at her. I said, "Hey mom, how does it feel to turn 99? And there she was, she had her eggs and bacon in front of her, and she just talked about it. And then I posted, and like people, "Oh my God, she's 99. Oh my God, she's eating bacon. Oh my God, what's her secret?" And so that went viral, and it was like, okay, forget the photography. And I focused on her and then some of our story and the forgiveness. But yeah, no, so that's kind of what happened, that she kind of took off. Do you know the singer Jax? Do you know her? Jas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I do.
she discovered my mom on social media, and I got mom up to the Amway Center in Orlando where she was on tour performing, and she wrote, she does these parodies. So she did a parody that she wrote for my mom, and then
We did that.
and then I asked her if she would invite my mother on stage. And there were, I don't know, it was pretty packed. It fits 20,000 people, and they all sang happy birthday to her.
There must have been
Wow.
It's on my Instagram.
there must have been 18,000 people in Amway.
For sure.
Singing
Amazing.
Happy birthday to her.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Wow.
her are really dedicated to her. I have to be careful. If I talk about my past, some people go, "Oh, let it go," like, "You were probably a spoiled brat." It's almost like, I don't want to mention any names here, but, we know some people who have followings that will do anything for them, right? And like my mom, yep, right. So she's kind of a cult leader now.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah, but she has that kind of following, which is really heartwarming. And it's fun because she's like, "These people don't even know me, and they're sending me cards."
It's great.
Birthday cards. So it is sweet. So so I think I would say that the beginning was to answer your question, was when my father died. I think then I'd opened up this space, and we went on this first trip together, and in the end was like, "Oh, that worked out nice." And then we made it a routine. Every year we did another trip together. And then I thought, well, I have to get, because I was still getting all pissed off with because my brothers, the bullying continued with them, and I just had to work through it. So that's when I did it. We went on camera, and I worked through it and figured out the steps to finding forgiveness that completely freed me up. So yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about that. So it sounds like.
It's
Sorry,
like
what's that?
Gentle, as you know, you're a creative. I'm a creative. I didn't expect to also be in the wellness. Well, look, you're doing a podcast, which is also kind of about wellness. So
Indeed.
I think
Very much so.
I think the thing when, artists and creative people, we're super sensitive people. And so we are often the ones who are preyed upon by abusive people because we react, abusive people want to get a reaction out of you. And so we do. And so, yeah, and then we are the ones who want to understand why and and, learn and grow and stuff like that. So, yeah.
If you're enjoying this program, if you love Lunacy, please consider becoming part of our team. Go to patreon.com/Lunacy podcast. You can choose a number of different levels to support us on a monthly basis so that we can continue the work of exploring the love operating system, how best to be of service, and how to live life to the fullest. Thank you so much for your support. Much love, everybody. Yeah. So it sounds like there was a period where you were touring this film and you had all these people coming up to you saying, "Oh my God, listen to my story about how I've been dealing with my mother." And then enabled you to see, oh, this is a common experience that people are having where they've got a relationship with a parent that just doesn't work. And, maybe it's abusive. And so then maybe it's not personal. And you were able to kind of objectify the relationship and see that it wasn't about her with you, that she was just a person. And then you talk in your TED Talk a little bit about that and kind of how you just stopped letting it affect you. Could you share with us a little bit about that and then how that transformed also her behavior?
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of like you did a jujitsu move where you kind of moved out of the way, of the thing that was coming at you. You didn't let it affect you. And because of that, the whole dynamic unraveled.
Yeah, I know, that's interesting. I like your metaphor there. Well, I knew I would have to forgive her in order to find my freedom. And I was struggling, well, how do I do it? Because, the endless, if you wish somebody dead, that's pretty bad, right? When I was young. So I thought, I have to understand her. Why is she doing what she's doing? And that's when I did a dive into her past, of which, you haven't seen the film, but if you see the film, her repeated answer is, I don't know, I don't remember, because it's very common in her generation, my grandparents' generation, to just bury the bad stuff. They're more focused on practical. Let's, we got to pay the bills, we got to do this, it's not like, let's deal with our trauma, let's deal with our emotion. That gets suppressed and buried. So it comes out in other ways, physically, it gets us sick, right? I mean, how many people are suffering from illnesses because they don't deal with their rage and their anger and their trauma, right? So,
absolutely.
Right. So I ended up doing a dive, and that required genealogy research, that digging up articles, finding family members that at that point she had a couple of surviving first cousins, and that's in the movie. I have a reunion with them and interviewed them. So just piecing the narrative of her childhood, a lot of the tragedies that she chose to forget. And I can understand. I mean, my grandmother used to say, when you laugh, the world laughs with you. And when you cry alone. So you don't hang out your dirty laundry. You don't air it. And so even when I brought her together with her first cousin, she didn't know, that she had a sister who died. And then her first cousin said, well, if anyone had cancer, you didn't tell anybody. Like, you didn't want to tell anybody about anything bad. Like, you never shared that. So all that you're dealing with this grief and this trauma in your life by yourself because you can't share it, right? So like buried. So I realized that all her trauma was repressed in her life because my grandfather tried to kill himself twice, and she was a young person when this happened. And I would ask, was there shame attached? She would just say, I just didn't tell anybody. Like, there's no community, you just shut it off. Like, it doesn't exist. So when I dug and then I realized, in my genealogy research, I'm like, oh my God, another address in the census and another address. I mean, she was like barely 17. They were always moving. And then as I'm putting, the spreadsheet of her childhood together, I'm like, Mom, wow, you moved so much. And she said, well, back then, the landlords would give you 3 months rent free on a new lease. And my grandmother was dealing with a depressed husband who was bedridden, who was, tried to kill himself twice. And she had to roll up her sleeves, and she went to business, and she opened up her own produce store my grandfather could barely work because he was so depressed. So, if you watch my film, one of the therapists who I think is amazing, Dr. Pamela Thompson, who's based in Atlanta, she's African American. She's gorgeous. She looks like Halle Berry. She wrote a book called Surviving Mama, which are African American mother-daughter stories. But when one of my researchers found her and we got on the phone, we just completely clicked. And I asked her if she would work with us, and I flew her up, and she was unbelievable. I mean, she knew nothing about our culture, two neurotic New York Jews, she had no idea about what she was stepping into, but she was amazing. And she started her session with doing what's called a family genogram, which is like a family tree, but tracing human behavior. Okay, so we have your grandfather. How would you describe him? What was his behavior? Then, all right, then you go under. So she concluded in my mom's family, the men were all the screamers and the yellers, and the women are the ones that held it together, Yeah. And as in her immediate family, my grandmother is the one who had to go work and support the family. And then she has a daughter. She has a husband who's bedridden by, depression. And she's got a daughter who suddenly gets pneumonia. And back then they didn't have penicillin. And is gone in a year and a half, she dies. And my mom doesn't remember, but I had done genealogy research to let her know she was 7 when this happened.
And I remember nothing about it.
She blocked it out.
Wow. Okay.
Even today.
Uh-huh.
So it had to be so traumatic that she just blocked it out.
Yeah.
She remembers the death because it happened at the beach, because they had moved, they went in the summer to near the ocean. This is in Brooklyn, Coney Island, because they understood the good air would be good for sea air would help her sister, but it unfortunately didn't, and she died. And that happened when they were at the beach. So she has all those, seeing a cop holding her sister who was a dead infant and her mother crying, and these are like memories she'll never forget, but, buried or so,
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, just to wrap that up quickly. So I did one thing that was major. I met a woman in LA. She had a horrific childhood, and in her healing, she became a facilitator of a forgiveness board game, like a board game that you throw dice and move a piece. And
amazing.
The only thing I remember from that day is when I threw the dice, it landed somewhere. She said, "Stand up and close your eyes." And I did. And she said, "Imagine your mother's a little girl." So I had done my homework. I knew all the tragedy. So I saw this little girl. And then she said, "Now imagine yourself as a little girl." Well, I knew I was a wounded little girl. And then she said, "Okay, you both come together." And that was huge, Geoff, because suddenly she was no longer my mother. Because when you have that title, there's expectations. She should love and nurture me. Why is she so nice to my brothers? Why is she not nice to me? It took that away. She was no longer my mother. She was like me, a wounded child who had so much pain from her tragedies in her life. So I reframed how I looked at her. And by doing that, I changed my expectations. So as she continued on her journey of criticizing me, when those criticisms came, I just kind of laughed them off and thought, she is so desperate for love. That's really what she wants. She's in so much pain, and she's just like aiming this stuff at me. And it just was blowing off of me, like I never had a child, but I always tell people who've had a child, if your little kid looked up to you and said, "Mommy, Daddy, I don't love you anymore," what are you going to do? You're going to bend down and give them love because you know that's what they're asking. So when I stopped reacting to the darts that were being thrown in my way, she realized they weren't effective anymore. And so she eventually stopped, because it wasn't having any impact on me. And that began the changes. And then, I felt compassion and I was able to forgive her.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. And Mildred, so we talk in this podcast quite a lot about becoming more responsive and less reactionary. Like our tendency is just triggers come and life's constantly happening and we just react to it and we're like, that's bad, instead of like taking a moment to actually respond and consider, oh, wait a minute, this person's coming from a different perspective. And so it's a really beautiful example of that, where you saw that she was reacting to her own childhood, and that you know, the criticism was coming from that space. And then you, Gayle, instead of reacting to it, took the time to just respond and see it for what it was, which was really like, you know, a plea for love and affection and like that, and acceptance. And so I'm wondering, Mildred, do you remember when that change happened? Do you remember when Gayle kind of stopped reacting to you? And what was that like for you?
I think when we were in Avignon and we had the car and we drove through the area, that's when I realized we were friends.
I see. Okay, that's great. So what happened was, it sounds like you just stopped the criticism and you were just like, oh, wait a minute, we're friends. This is my friend. Is that right, Mildred?
You don't think so?
No, I think you got to look at me differently on that first trip, but I think it was I think it wasn't a switch like one moment. I think it was gradual.
Sure.
Because I will remind you of one incident.
Everything is gradual.
Okay, so I'll remind you of one incident that I'll share
True.
with Geoff and his audience. Some years ago, I inherited my grandmother's jewelry. It wasn't much, but she was very, I mean, it didn't matter. She was just she was the only one in my entire family that I actually felt loved me. Like, I grew up feeling very unloved, and she was the only one I felt loved me. Although she actually always defended my mother when I would complain about what she was doing to me, she would always go, oh, she's got your father to deal with. Because my father also was a victim. He had been abused when he was a child, and he had a very short fuse. Anyway, long story short, so my mother's quite the fashionista. You know, can put herself together. She loves jewelry. Her creativity, maybe she doesn't draw or paint, which I believe anyone can learn, but she's really incredible with fashion and jewelry and accessories. So I had an event or something to go to, and she's like, oh, you should, you know, wear the blah, blah, blah piece from grandma. And I had put the jewelry, so I thought, in the safe deposit box in the bank. And when I went to get it, it wasn't there. And of course, you know, I let her know, and she then did what she had always been doing. Gayle, you lose everything. And even though I don't, and she went on a whole rant, how horrible I am, how stupid I am, how I lose everything, blah, blah, blah. So I began my search I have a loft in New York, so I have very high ceilings. So I was climbing and searching. And then it's so funny, I have an Orthodox girlfriend, she's Orthodox Jewish. And I said, Tova, I can't find my grandmother's jewelry. So she calls in her tribe. They're doing the jewelry prayer. And then all day long, I'm like on tall ladders because the ceilings are high. I am in and out of closets and moving boxes. And, you know, she's just, at this point, she's done with me. She's hanging up the phone, like, because I'm useless and I'm just lose everything and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, nightfall hits. I'm in another closet and bam, I find the jewelry. It's, you know, behind some boxes. I call Tova. I go, those prayers worked. I found the jewelry. I call my mother, and as expected, she turned on a dime. We were now like best girlfriends. Oh, Gayle, you know how many times I lose things. And I just started laughing. I said, Mom, I just want to thank you for all that love and support you gave me today. And she started laughing like she is now. So when you could turn it around and like let them see what the behavior that they had all day long, because I just, you know, like I expected her to do all those things and say those things. And then but it didn't have any impact on me anymore. And that's the key.
Yeah.
That's rewrite your story. And again, you know, it took time, and gradually she just stopped because it wasn't, but the fact that she even started laughing now, she just started cracking up on the phone when I said, thank you for that love and support. And she realized what a bitch she was. All day long. Oh, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Can you just take us through some steps of forgiveness that you illustrate in different forms in your TED Talk, et cetera? Can you just take us through those steps really quick?
I have several, but I'm just going to keep it short and do the three main ones. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So well, first of all, you always need a support. So, I mean, I'll just say you need a support system. It's very hard to do this on our own. So that support system could be everything from getting a pet or having an animal, because you get a lot of love, to have like-minded friends, have community. If you have a spiritual practice, get that rolling, whether it's yoga, meditation, whatever your spiritual thing is, to do that. to also to have community. And the other thing is to make sure when you build that community, watch your expectations, because, people are good in different areas. So friends like you might have had for years might not be very good in empathy, but they're good to travel with or to go to a movie with or to help you schlep things around. So be careful when you build that support system. You really need a support system. You need a daily practice. Also, your location. So when you get doing this work, try to have boundaries set up, because if you're in the midst of it, like for me, I was living at home. It was like I was living in enemy territory, being attacked constantly. And so when I got out of the house at the end of my 16th year, I was 200 miles away. So, try to live in a safe place where where you're not subjective to the constant battering, whatever form of abuse you're getting, that you're in a safe place. And then start the digging. You got to start digging into that person who's been hurting you. And in certain cases, I know people go, I don't know, I can't find out. See what you can do. There's relatives around, or, as I said, my mom was already in her 80s, and I just was digging up records, genealogy records. I was piecing the narrative together as best as you could. And if you really are stuck, just conclude. If somebody's hurting you, they are hurt, because hurt people hurt people. When we feel the love, when we are feeling the love, we are giving love. When we feel love, we are not hurting other people. So we hurt other people when we are hurt. So if you can't get all the details and all the specifics, you have to assume that there's trauma in that person's life that most likely was passed on, because trauma keeps getting passed on from generation to generation. And if you could realize that person is in a lot of pain and hurt, change your expectations. So, I'm going to talk about a parent, because, my movement's called No More Drama with Mom. And of course, these tools can apply to everybody or anybody. But I always say when people complain about, not getting on with the boss or somebody else, it's like, well, we got to go back to your primary relationship, because we have to deal with that. You have to release whoever was raising you. That's the person that had the greatest impact on you. And frequently it's a mother, sometimes it's a father, whoever was, sometimes somebody else raised them. Or it was, stuff going on. And sibling relationships, by the way, are affected by how the parents treat the siblings. So if there's differential treatment, that's why I was never close with my brothers, because of the differential treatment. They were close with each other, but I didn't have a relationship with them. But anyway, so then understand that they are hurt, and change how you look at them. So take them off whatever role they played in your life. So I'm just going to say mother, father, whatever, and look at them as a wounded child. And if you reframe, so that's the reframing part. So if you reframe how you look at them, and that now, like I remember I gave a workshop, and this one woman, she was the one preyed upon. She's a beautiful woman, actress, very ingenue, but sensitive, beautiful inside and out. Her father did the praying, but her sister wasn't preyed upon. And her sister was with her when she got one of her nasty texts from her, hurtful text from her father. And her sister read it, and her sister said, oh, just forget about him. Look at him as a big baby in a diaper. So it is like visualize that person, whatever you have to do. I thought big baby in a diaper was kind of a great image. As like a wounded, a baby in a diaper who's crying, who's having a temper tantrum and going, fuck you, or you're shit, or you're stupid, or you're fat, you're ugly, or, why didn't you become a lawyer? And how come you're living this life when you could be living that life? And where's your house and 3 cars and blah, 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 and all the expectations. So just they are wounded, themselves. And so if you change that and you see them as a big child, then suddenly when their actions and their words and their whatever kind of criticisms, just, realize that it's coming from a child. So it's like, I was talking to a friend, it's like, how do we get, can you get angry at a blind person for not driving a car? You can't. So how can we get angry at a person who doesn't have the tools. They didn't learn. These people who are hurting us, they never learned. They might not, my mother didn't have like the kind of abuse I got, but she didn't get the kind of love and attention that she desperately needed, right? She was in, hospitals and there was so much other stuff going on. She had a sister that was sick, then her father was sick. And maybe when you're saying she became a helicopter mother and you were suffocated. So whatever it is, you got to let it bounce off now. So what hurts us are unfulfilled expectations. When we change our expectations, that's the key, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Like reframing.
Yeah. So it sounds like forgiveness amounts to really reframing how you understand the person, really having compassion for who they are and why they are the way that they are, and seeing that they are also wounded just like you, and then also rewriting your story about them and seeing that what they really want more than anything else is love, and then creating that love with them and fostering a relationship, which is so beautiful that the two of you have done with each other. I just really want to acknowledge both of you for like doing this work. Like, it's really, what a beautiful story that you have. And Mildred, what are some other tips that you can give us that, to life and to living life large and to being in love with your life at any age?
What tips? Enjoy life. It's a single road. You can't go backwards. Enjoy life.
About fear. Don't live in fear of things.
Don't live in fear of things. Don't be afraid to go on a trip. Don't be afraid to get in the car and drive somewhere. You're capable. Don't say, well, I'm 80 already. I'm not going to go to the supermarket alone, or I wouldn't get on the 95, or it's time for me to stop driving. If you are intelligent, if you do not have dementia, you will know when you have to stop driving. You will know when you can no longer go to the supermarket and carry in packages. You will know. Believe in yourself.
Beautiful.
You will know.
So there's an element of trust yourself there, it sounds like, that you definitely have. And what about complaining?
What are you going to complain about? Give me an example. You don't like your doctor? Change him.
Mm-hmm.
Your food is cold? Ask them to warm it. If it's really bad and you don't want to send it back, have an extra dessert. What are you going to complain about? Your hair is no good? Well, neither is mine today. If you don't like it, too bad about you. That's it.
That's
Don't
great.
spend your life complaining. And your attitude is the biggest thing about life.
Mm-hmm.
So this one story is going to tell you her personality. So she used to own a travel agency in New York. And then when she moved down here, she still has her license for travel, and she's hooked up to an agency. And one day she was in their office and a disgruntled customer called, and someone worked there said they wanted to talk. They said, Mildred, they want to talk to your boss. And my mother answers the phone and goes, the only person I report to is God. I kind of said it all.
Beautiful. That's great. And so what's your attitude now, Mildred? How would you describe your attitude? What's the winning attitude for people to have?
I'm waiting for you to hang up so I could go to happy hour.
She's getting like a little nervous. I hate to say it.
You like that one?
It's 4 o'clock Standard Time, and if she wants to get a good seat.
I gotcha. I get it.
I'm only kidding.
Yeah.
I have been blessed to do one-liners. In other words, I don't practice it.
They come out of her.
They just come out.
I'd like to publish a book of her one-isms, these one-liners.
Beautiful.
Like this one. You do the best you know how. And if it doesn't turn out to your liking, you know you did your best.
Okay.
That's great.
So I'll give you one of her one-liners. So she's not sentimental. She doesn't care about history of family or anything like that. I'm totally into a lot of the stuff, right? Genealogy and roots. And I was like sharing with her some genealogy stuff. And she goes, the only roots I care about are my hair roots. It's true.
That's great. That's beautiful. Great.
So for Gail, I have to give her credit that she puts up with me. And for that, I love you.
Beautiful. That's great.
So you want to go on a
Really?
cruise with us?
Now we're going on a cruise to celebrate her 100th.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Where are you going? Where's the cruise going?
Oh, we're taking the Titanic route.
They have enough lifeboats.
On the ship.
If they didn't have enough lifeboats, they'd say, leave Gail, give me my son. Some things never change. But I think we have enough lifeboats.
That's great. Awesome. Beautiful. Do you mind if I sing you happy birthday?
Oh, no.
Because by the time this episode airs.
What pitch?
Oh, like you know.
I don't know. I'm not sure what pitch. All right, here we go. Ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mildred. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
Thanks. Happy birthday.
Thank you. And thank you for
Awesome.
putting this on.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for being.
I
Oh,
hope-
you know what?
Well, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Absolutely.
Is that what people say after sex? Oh, okay.
Okay, so the question that I ask all of my podcast guests, and I'll ask each of you separately, is I'll start with you, Mildred. For you, what is sacred and what is insane?
What is sacred and what is insane? Sacred to me are my children, their health. If they're healthy, it's their choice to be happy or unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
Health you cannot buy. Insane is not to be happy with what you have. The grass is not greener somewhere else. So what if your neighbor has a better car? Doesn't matter. Really doesn't. Those are my thoughts.
Beautiful. That's great. Hey, Gail, what about for you? What is sacred and what is insane?
I think sacred is honest connection and communication. Honesty and connection and communication is very sacred. And what is insane?
And what is insane? For you, what is insane?
Lying and manipulating. That's tough for me. I find that pretty insane.
Yeah. Perfect. That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate both of you. And thank you so much for sharing your story of forgiveness and love and just, recreating who you are for each other. It's really just such a beautiful example for all of us. And Mildred, thank you for kicking ass as a centenarian. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today to Lunacy. If you'd like to support the show, please go to patreon.com/Lunacy podcast and become a member of our team. Tune in next week. Much love, everybody. Cheers.